live from the glorious city of Melbourne
and live from the USA.
Your superstar hosts, Michael Sopel.
I'm going to say we play and win a final.
Sam Manhannett.
The top four.
Like it.
Carlton.
There it is. There it is. I was waiting for it.
This is In the Ballpark.
The stakes get no higher. And we are away.
Roved by Bailey Smith. A bouncing ball. Blitzard's all on his own. Mr. Versatile. 3 in a row for the Cats. Starts it on a good line. A very good line. What a kick for goal he is. The Coleman medalist.
For Cameron. Flick to the back. Stengel around the body. Cats have got another one. Close to Dangerfield. Here come the Cats. And after a scare early, the Cats have steamrolled into a 20th grand final.
The two most recent premiers get it underway with a Matt Stevic perfect bounce in the middle.
For a spot in the big dance, and there is one straight kick separating them. Make it maybe more than that. That's the best thing you've ever seen. Will Ashcroft produces a miracle. Brilliant, sublime, superb.
Brandon Starcevic told to go. No one on the mark. Able to pick up an extra 5 metres. Got a deep ball inside 50. Rayner at the back. It really tightens up for the Pies. Rayner comes in and he threads it straight through the middle. Rayner's kicked a massive goal.
Charlie Cameron. Yes, sirree.
There it is. Brisbane into another grand final.
Hello and welcome to the In the Ballpark Grand Final Special. My name is Sam Manhannett. I'm joined, of course, by Michael Sopel, and we are outside the glorious MCG for what's building up to be a massive grand final day. First of all, what's it like to be back on the ground? For those listeners, Michael has been for the past 12 to 18 months across in Central America and North America, and he's back here in Melbourne to witness our great game of footy. What's it like to be back?
First of all, Sam, it's wonderful to be back. It is a very cold summer's afternoon here in Melbourne. We are, of course, in front of the home of football, the Melbourne Cricket Ground. And yes, it is always a great time of the year in September, but it has been several months since I've been back in Melbourne. But Sam, it's obviously wonderful to be here. And yeah, I think you get a greater appreciation about how much Australians and in particular Victorians get into the footy at this time of the year. We have been fortunate enough to be in and around the footy festival, which we'll get into in a moment, and just to see all the footy fans here celebrating their teams. And a lot of these teams that are represented here, Sam, aren't even in the finals or the grand final yet. Footy fans do come together for this time of the year because there is something magical in the air. Genuinely is. So for us to be covering this kind of event on the ground where it's going to happen on Saturday, Sam, it's honestly a privilege.
It's always a nice vibe around, and it's the conversation. Everyone's talking about the grand final, and it just lifts your spirits. Unfortunately, it's a bit dark and gloomy. Dark and gloomy, so we're hoping for a nicer sunny day at least. It's expected to be warm and 19. So, well, it's warm for this kind of year.
It is.
Cold. And then maybe a slight chance of rain, but we hope not. We hope it's a clean shootout, and we'll get into a couple of things. So 19 degrees expected for Melbourne on grand final day. I'm doing my best.
The meteorologist, Sam, I must be very impressed. Jane Bunn might be nervous, I tell you.
Chance of rain, so it's 25% chance of rain, but possible risk. And of course, the entertainment is headed by, of course, Snoop Doggy Dog.
Pass you the blood there, Sammy boy.
I wonder if we'll see any of that, any big cloudy corporate boxes during the game. But he was out with the Dacos brothers a few days ago testing his football skills. And gee, we should sign him up. He's got the build for a key forward.
He actually does.
You've got the classic one where they give the ball 5 metres from the front and you expect them to put that away. But Snoop Dogg put it away from the boundary with a snap.
Sam, it was ultra impressive. You know, sometimes when you have these big international artists come for the grand final, they kick a ball and they've got almost the American punter style. They kind of hold the ball out in front of their hands about a metre and they just kind of slam it down like a nutcracker. But no, Snoop Dogg, it was very natural. I mean, you're almost going to be a good player by just being in the presence of the Dacos boys. They've clearly been kicking around a ball on string since they were a young age. But yeah, I think we're genuinely very excited for Snoop Dogg. I know the AFL typically get these, you know, big headline acts where they're out of their prime. But in saying all of that, Snoop, I feel like he's always around.
He stretched the AFL budget. So he got them to set up a replica stage in Marvel Stadium for a week. So he's putting some work in. So I'm expecting good things of that. Also joining Snoop Dogg will be, of course, Baker Voy. We seen him at the grand final a couple of years ago in Perth.
RMIT graduation, shout out.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Tash Sultana, Mike Brady, of course. We've defrosted him. Can't wait. Up there, Kazali is the tradition.
He's like Mariah Carey at Christmas time, isn't he? You wheel him out, but he still does that. You know, up there, Kazali. I mean, we just love it. He's one of the best features of the finals here.
A choir featuring Emma Donovan and Kia. There's a Kia. And the national anthem will be sung by Vera Blue.
Vera Blue, again, another RMIT graduation ceremony artist. So RMIT get in first.
Okay, so fun facts about this grand final. First off the back, I should mention, both teams are sitting on 4 grand final flags this century.
Wow.
So, of course, Geelong 2007, 2009, 11 and 22. And Brisbane, the three-peat, of course, in 2001, 2 and 3, and 2024. And both last grand final appearances for both clubs have been Sydney.
Wow, isn't that interesting? And both of those grand finals, Sam, dare I say it, Swan supporters, you know, quite one-sided affairs. Yeah. Just on that as well, Sam, I mean, you know, I know we're talking about the success rate of these two clubs. I know last week on the show we mentioned about the success rate of the 4 teams that were in the preliminary finals. Hawthorn, again, is another one of those teams sitting on 4 premiership wins with their 08 and then, of course, their three-peat from 2013 to 2015.
Yeah.
So some very successful teams staying around the mark for long periods of time. I know it frustrates us Essendon and Carlton fans, but yeah, for Brisbane and Geelong to both be in the grand final, going for that 5th grand final in this century, so it's a big deal.
You'd be the most successful club this century if whoever wins this flag. And I think it's great that we get to see these two teams together in a grand final. Of course, they've played, here it is. So 3, they've crossed paths with the 5th finals meeting in 6 seasons.
Wow.
After they crossed paths in 3 prelim finals.
Yeah,
so they've had some big games and lots of memories. Even in home and away seasons, we've had all the way back, thinking back to the early noughties.
Oh, yeah.
Miracle on
grass. Ash McGrath. How good was that game? Wow, yeah. They've had some great rivalries. I feel like Geelong obviously haven't really dipped out of finals, you know, maybe 1 or 2 seasons in, you know, the last 10, 15 years, they haven't featured in a final series. Brisbane obviously were quite in the doldrums with this massive rebuild that they did kind of 2010s. But now we're really seeing the fruits of all of that hard work that went in. Obviously, Chris Fagan has just won the coach of the season, Sam. So, no, they definitely deserve to be where they are right now. And both of these football clubs, a lot of success in recent times.
Now, obviously, we'll have a look at the previous games that they've had against each other this year. But interesting fact, the reigning premiers have history on their side with 4 of the 5 teams this century that have lost a qualifying final and then faced the same opponent in a grand final have claimed victory when it matters most. So that's an interesting one there.
Wow,
But of course, Geelong have had the extra week. We know how important that is. And actually, Brisbane did it the long way around last year as well.
They did. Obviously, they finished outside of the 8 last season, so they had to obviously play in an elimination final in that first week. In fact, the first week of the finals here, these two teams actually met against each other. That was the last time that they met, the qualifying final that we were both at. Bit of a one-sided affair there, Geelong having most of the ascendancy in there. But no, I mean, Hawthorn had to do it the long way around in 2015. I remember they had to play the Eagles in the West, and they lost that game, and then they absolutely smoked them in the grand final, Sam. So it just goes to show it can be done, but 2 consecutive years in a row, that would have to be a bit of history too.
Yep. We'll start off with the road to the grand final, and we'll look at Geelong first. So they finished second on the ladder. Of course, they defeated in the qualifying final, 16-16, 112 to 11-8, 74. They then bet Hawthorn in the prelim final, 17-13, 115 to 13-7, 85. What do we think about their prelim action?
Oh, look, it was a very complete performance, looking back at Geelong in that game. I think we sort of spoke about it off air around, certain teams spooking each other. And obviously the Geelong-Hawthorn rivalry has been one that we've really enjoyed in the modern era. Yeah. And obviously the 1989 grand final, still to this day, my dad's favourite grand final in history. But yeah, I mean, Geelong just were really in control probably after halftime more so. Hawthorn really started that game quite well. They kicked a couple of goals and Nick Watson kicked a couple of miraculous goals from the pocket. But then really Geelong just took control. Obviously Tom Stewart going down, we will talk about. Well, Sam, every year there's always a player, under a questionable cloud, whether it's an injury cloud or otherwise in grand finals. Unfortunately, Tom Stewart, with the weak concussion rule, will miss the grand final this Saturday. And of course, that will spark a lot of debate around whether there is a bye between the prelim and the grand final week. But yeah, Geelong, it was a very complete performance. Once Tommy Stewart went down, it didn't seem to affect their structure too much. And
no, well, at one point they had two players down, and you thought at that point, because Hawthorn had control of the game, it was topsy-turvy at that point. But just props to them, and a shout-out to a couple of guys here. Patrick Dangerfield, 31 disposals and 3 goals, just turning it on, classic vintage stuff. I know there's been a lot of talk. Maybe has he passed it, but he's just shown what he can do on the big stage. And they were very smart. A lot of people criticised Geelong for the way that they packaged him up in bubble wrap all year and only dished him out for certain things. But if this is the result of that you can bring him out in finals, and I think it's a very smart way to do it when you've got champions that are going to, get a few extra squeezes of the lemon out of them.
Right, and I mean, on the contrary to that, Sam, in the other final where Collingwood went down to Brisbane, we saw Scott Pendlebury in the opening minutes of that game go down with a calf strain, and so, Father Time will always catch up to you when you're on the other side of 35 or even the other side of 30 in some scenarios. So for Geelong to do the management that they did, I would believe Scott Pendlebury probably would have been wheeled out for more games. He is essentially like an extra coach on field. But yeah, for Pat Dangerfield to be the skipper of the club and to actually take a step back, it would have been hard for him, I'm sure, Sam, being the ferocious competitor that he is, to actually sit out a lot of those games and be quote unquote rested. But yeah, when you get the results in, the finals where it matters most, that's the reason why you do it. So congratulations to him, and all of the conditioning staff there at Geelong for pulling that off.
A couple other goal kickers. So Jeremy Cameron with 3, Tyson Stengel with 3. Now, he actually broke a record, Jeremy Cameron. I think it was the most scoring shots in a quarter of a final or something along those lines. But, of course, we saw in that game, he didn't have that. I know he had the 3 goals, but the conversion rate wasn't that good. So I think if he can really get on top of his thing, that's going to be dangerous, because the scores were kind of spread in that game.
It was.
Disposals, Bailey Smith, 36 and a goal. He's another one worth mentioning.
Oh, yeah.
I know we've talked about him a lot this year, especially when he's got into trouble, but if we forget about that for a minute, he's been a great pickup for them, and he's done wonders for Geelong this year, and he's really turned it on and really had some standout performances, especially against Brisbane this year. So, superstar almost won a Brownlow. He wasn't that far off.
Yeah.
Brian Myers, another standout one from that prelim game, 27 disposals and a goal. So he's been, I think, an up and down player for them, but he's a nice pop-up spring if he can get him going in the big game.
Definitely.
As well. We'll take a look at Brisbane's road to the grand final now. Finished third on the ladder. They, of course, lost the qualifying to Geelong. Then they went over to the big Q clash, the Gold Coast semi-final, 14-16, 100 to 6-11, 47 in the end. So they managed to put the foot down in that. And then they came against Collingwood in the prelim final, which was one for the ages, really exciting one. 15-10, 100 to 11-5, 71, 29-point victory. Similar margins in both prelim finals, interestingly enough. Goals in that game, Ty Gallop with 3, Cam Rayner 2, Zach Bailey 2, Will Ashcroft 2. Disposals, Hugh McCluggage, 37-1. He's been something for them this season. He's really stood up to them. Was a bit quiet in maybe the first outing against Geelong in the finals, but really stood up. Dane Zorko, another old player that he was celebrating a milestone this year, 28 and a goal. I'm really excited that we're getting to see a grand final where these vintage players are coming out and they're really starting to give a crack. How did you see Brisbane in that game?
Oh, Brisbane were really the Brisbane of old in that game. I think, throughout this final series, but particularly after that loss in the qualifying final, I know a lot of us probably had our question marks over, is back-to-back just a bridge too far, Sam? But no, they showed in that game against Collingwood that when they really gained momentum, they really took advantage of their opportunities. And they honestly, literally did not need many opportunities to be able to get their noses in front in that game. I just think of Will Ashcroft's goal off the ground, a literal soccer volley goal to continue to keep Brisbane in that game and put them ahead. So, no, Brisbane just had so many even contributors in that final. Obviously, Hugh McCluggage was amazing. Collingwood will obviously reflect on this game with a sour taste in their mouth, but also knowing that I think a lot of their vintage midfielders we're talking about, Father Time not catching up to you. Well, a couple of those Collingwood midfielders who are a little bit past the age of 30, I think probably struggled to keep up with some of those players, still side bottom included in that. We know how good he's been in finals, but definitely hurt him at times, some of those efforts. But look, in general, I mean, Brisbane really had composure of that game and some of those younger players like Ty Gallop, stepping up, taking big marks, taking their moment in only his 5th or 6th game of AFL, Sam. So, yeah, the contributions aren't just coming from those older players that you touched on, but they're also coming from this new young fleet of players coming through, which is ultra exciting. And both Ashcroft brothers playing in a grand final together, just Levi's first season as well in the comp. Pretty incredible storyline, Sam. So Brisbane will not fear Geelong nor the MCG this weekend.
Now, I mentioned before the Jeremy Cameron stat. I've got it here again. So Jeremy Cameron set the tone in that qualifying final with 6 shots at a goal in the opening term, the most ever by a player in a quarter in a final. Wow. So
he was having a lot of it.
And already the Coleman by a big margin.
Yep. And
we were hoping at one stage he might hit 100. So he is definitely in career best form.
Well,
so can't wait to see what he does in the big stage. So a few other things from that qualifying final. So we'll take a broader look at their clashes from 2025. So this will be the 4th edition of Brisbane v Geelong. Round 3, Brisbane defeated Geelong by 9 points at the Gabba. Round 15, Brisbane defeated Geelong by 41 at GMHBA. And obviously we had the qualifying final where it went the other way and a few interesting things. So overall, in raw numbers, disposals have always been a positive for Brisbane. Inside 50s, decisive swing. Brisbane dominated in the home and away, but Geelong reversed it in finals.
Wow.
So we know they had a lot of midfield ball in that qualifying finals and the hit-outs and that stuff, but the inside 50s rate was something that really punished them in Geelong's Freds. And then that, even without Geelong having more of a spread with their goal kickers, it was just always the inside 50s count. And then we've had this broader discussion before because Brisbane not having that key forward type anymore. Where does that sit in that spread? And so there's a few key players that I think will have to have some impacts. And Charlie Cameron is definitely one of them that has to be an anchor. We've seen him fix a couple. And we finally got to see the motorbike in the last final.
We love it.
Had the greatest of years, but if you can turn it on in the good game, that they need someone like him.
They do.
A few in that quarterfinal as well. Cam Rayner had the 3. We know about the 2 free kicks. I think he's a bit of a barometer.
Oh, without a doubt, Sam. And, I was talking before just about the fact that, high impact, low disposal, and particularly like taking your opportunities when they're limited. And that's what Cam Rayner does, 1 or 2 steps is all he needs to size up the goals and kick some big goals. And we saw last year from the prelim final against Geelong that he kicked some big time goals. So he doesn't fear the main stage. And if Geelong don't do their work on him, particularly in the front half of the ground, Sam, where he does his biggest hurting for opposition, then he could really get off the chain in this game.
Now, talk about some breakout performers. So, obviously, across the games this year, Oliver Dempsey for Geelong was a standout. 28 with 3 goals in the qualifying final. Nice year from him.
Yeah, very nice.
And on Brisbane's side, Logan Morris, he actually kicked 5 goals against the Cats in round 15. And I think he kicked 1 or 2 in the prelim as well.
Could have done.
And disposals-wise, Zorko leading in that qualifying final, 35, 32. Dunkley, 30 and a goal. We've seen the tackle machine.
He's amazing. He's amazing, that guy.
Dempsey, I mentioned, 25 and 3. Max Holmes, he's had a pretty good year.
Another really good game.
And Tom Stewart was the 3rd most disposals, so that really hurts Geelong from that outing. And I mentioned the inside 50s, so Geelong had 60 in that game. Brisbane were 47. Couple other things that we're looking at. Tackling leads. Geelong really set the tone for tackling. And 80 to 64, as I think interesting. Brisbane dominance, though, across all the games in the ruck. The clearance count stayed almost even. Scoring efficiency has been the biggest match decider. So we've seen that with both clubs.
Yeah.
So with Geelong, especially, inaccuracy cost them in round 15. They kicked 6-15.
Oh, wow.
So pressure, tackle count, and fewer inside 50s is the danger for Brisbane.
Sure.
And ruck struggles and inaccuracy affecting Geelong. So who are we going to kind of feel for the ruck? Because we've seen when Blixarves was in the ruck, it was more of a positive impact.
Yeah, well, he's almost that pseudo, midfielder, Sam, where he is so tall and so agile, he can win his own ball as well. So even if you're not throwing him in there to necessarily win tap-outs, he can equalise the ruck contests and he can still have an impact, farming it out to those dominant midfielders that Geelong have. So I don't necessarily think that's a bad call if Chris Scott does decide to go with him in the midfield more often than not. But yeah, certainly the fact that that Brisbane will most likely play 2 rucks, being Darcy Ford and obviously Oscar McInerney. How good of a story is it to see him in a grand final? Of course, he missed out so devastatingly last year. So yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting battle, and whoever can obviously get first hands on it in the midfield is going to go a long way to deciding the game, Sam.
Okay, and with that selection note, so maybe a negative for Blickbass's kind of role there is that potentially, and as of recording, we don't know injury or selections, but Jack Henry carried an ankle issue through the game, so they could possibly lose him. We already know Tom Stewart is out with concussion. Reece Stanley is recovering from a hamstring issue. We don't know. God, the rumours are coming for Lockie Neal to make a magnificent return. Wouldn't that be something? But there is always the risk of
always a risk
player in a grand final. I know we have the sub now, and that's potentially what coaches will bring into play. But playing an injured player, you're asking for it. I think they'll know you're injured. There's no escaping that. So
It's a huge storyline, one way or another.
It is a huge call for Brisbane to make on that. Jared Berry is holding out hope of playing, despite dislocating his shoulder for the second time in 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's been hard for him with that shoulder.
So, overall thoughts, what are we thinking here? Well, we've seen majority of wins this year go Brisbane's way, apart from the big qualifying final. But what are we thinking?
Yeah, look, it's obviously going to be a very evenly matched game. I think both clubs are coming into this game with really good form. I think the previous record with Geelong and Brisbane might be looked at during the week as far as some of the matchups within that game. But look, to be honest, Sam, I think it's almost a clean slate as far as this game's concerned. I think that recent record isn't going to play too much into this game. But look, in saying all of that, I think if a lot of this game is going to be won and lost, believe it or not, in selection, Sam. If Brisbane do decide to bring in Lachie Neale, and I really hope he gets up for it because we know how good of a player he is. We have seen this be a 50-50 in the past. I still remember Steve Johnson in that grand final, I think with a broken hand, he came in and played for Geelong in 2011 and was obviously a really incredible contributor. We've seen rib injuries to Brisbane Lions players gone through the Lee Matthews test, you know. Will some of the Geelong players go through that Lee Matthews test this week? We'll definitely wait to see what happens there. But the thing is with injuries is that, like, that cloud of doubt, whether they get up or down, is going to permeate through the team. So, you know, sometimes Brisbane sitting down and saying, Lachie, we need to you know, be the voice of reason here, and you just haven't had enough time to recover from that injury. It might potentially risk you, you know, being next season.
Have him as a sub. So rather than start, throw him in for reduced time.
Well, then I guess the risk is with that is if a good player gets injured very early, and then the expectation for him to play, you know, 120 plus minutes, it could be really rough. So you could definitely see, but you could make an argument for both. I would err on the side of caution, just given just the stakes in the game. But at the same time, you know, we just know how influential he is. But also Brisbane winning that game last week against Collingwood would give them a lot of confidence that they can do it without him.
Yeah, and I think that first week, they were coming off Brisbane in the later part of the year, not that good of form into the finals. So I think they just needed that reset.
Yeah.
And going up and having those two good games, standout performance against the Suns and the Pies, really looking back at their best again. And if they can get all their players and they get the matchups right. I think we've seen the magnets kind of be switched around. Obviously, we've seen Darcy Gardner come in against Jerry McCameron after having who was it? I only know his nickname is Froggy. What's his name? Help me out here. He's for the Lester.
Ryan Lester, yeah.
Oh, this is the fault of Brisbane Nuffy's giving me that nickname. But yes, I think they can really look into that game. But I think they can go into this game more confident. And the fact that they did this the longer way around last year.
Yeah.
I know Geelong have been relaxed for the last 2 weeks and they've been here many times before, but just think Brisbane at their best are the best team in the comp and they'll beat anyone. I know we've seen the resurgence of this Geelong here, but I think Brisbane will get it right this time. But in saying that, it's going to be a very tight tussle and I'm expecting to see a really, really good grand final.
Yeah, so am I, Sam. I sometimes I think that if a team has played an opposition team and it's a matter of weeks that they've played in, the coaches can really go to work on the mechanics of what went wrong in that game. It's not just effort, it's not just work rate. There are fundamental things and coaches' boxes things that no doubt Chris Fagan would have picked up from Chris Scott in that loss in that qualifying final. Brisbane won't be making those same mistakes again. It's just whether or not Geelong can keep that same level of intensity around some of those fundamental things that they worked on last time in that game. And if Brisbane can come out and play the way they played against Collingwood, I think they're every chance to win. So I'm going to tip Brisbane in this one as well. I really do believe that having that experience in grand finals the last 2 times, you know, Geelong do have seasoned professionals in this game, but they haven't played on the last day in September since 2022. So I think recent form and obviously recent grand final history, the stage doesn't scare the Brisbane Lions in this, and I just think they'll be in beast mode, Sam, when it comes to Saturday.
Yeah, thinking back to the really good prelim final against these two clubs last year, that if that's a taster for this game, then we've got something really exciting to look forward to for sure. My margin, I'm going to go Brisbane by 11. What's yours?
I'm going to say it blows out a little bit. I'm going to say about 35 points.
Okay.
I know it's a little bit hard to see, being a really disciplined side like Geelong, but I think we've seen it in grand finals. I think it'll be a pretty close game for the most part, and then just after three-quarter time, I think Brisbane will go to work and put the nail in the coffin. But it's obviously so hard to predict. And Sam, let's not pretend. Our predictions have been pretty rotten at times this season.
But I think on the way things going, I've still got mine in the fire. Brisbane from the start.
Very true. Very true. That's a very good point.
Norm Smith.
Norm Smith. Oh, gosh. It's... I'm going to say a Brisbane player. I'm going to say, God, can Will Ashcroft win it 2 years in a row? I would love to see it. It's a tough one. I'm going to say Hugh McCluggage, just the form he's been in. I think he follows that through into the grand final. Sometimes we do see forwards win it, Sam. Influential forwards like Bobby Hill in times gone by as well. But yeah, I think Hugh McCluggage, if he plays the way that he did in that prelim final and for most of this season, I think he's going to be a big reason why Brisbane win that game.
I'm going to say it's going to be a forward for Brisbane.
Okay.
And there's been one that's popped up, like a pop-up sprinkler the last couple of weeks. I know some goals were free kicks and he's converted them, but I think that gives him a big boost of confidence going into this. And he's had a pretty good record against Geelong this year, and I'm going to go with Cam Rayner.
Cam Rayner. The old Pegs boy from the school that I went to. We love him. And he's really coming into his own, Sam. I think the longest time the narrative around Cam was, is he just a dust in, just a little gold nugget in a big pan of dirt. But no, he has just shown that he's an impact player, and his accuracy and all of those missed tackles that the Suns had against him, it just shows how strong of a player that he is. So I could definitely see something like that happening, Sam. He's really flipped the switch on his own career, and he's really enjoying all the fruits of what his team's doing.
Well, I'm excited to say thank you very much for watching and listening, of course, as well as being podcasts. You can watch this full across our Facebook and YouTube channels and keep up to date. Maybe we even have some grand final day content. Who knows?
Well, Sam, I was just going to quickly say before you do an incredible outro, we are fortunate enough to be here. You might hear some sound happening in the background. We're here at the Footy Festival, which, of course, goes from Wednesday when we're recording this all the way up until, pretty much Friday, where, of course, public holiday in Melbourne and, of course, the grand final parade, which is going to be fantastic, Sam. We hope slightly nicer weather, obviously, for grand final days. You said 19 degrees. It's warm for this time of the year, but also, we love getting out for the finals festival and obviously seeing all the different players. We've seen a few players here. We've seen Sam Doherty. He's been around signing autographs. Libby Birch from the AFLW team of North Melbourne. I gave a thumbs up before to Archie Roberts, who's had a fantastic season for Essendon in a pretty difficult time. He has done very, very good. I had to get a little, selfish plug in there. But look, it's a great time, Sam. People celebrating footy. That's what we love to see. And it's a great time for local footy clubs that are wrapping up their grand finals and their seasons as well. And just for young kids to come and meet some of their idols, their heroes, and to have different little, festivities happening, whether it's a Sharon, engravement on your own footy, or whether it's just a couple of, Dodgem carts with some legends in there like Luke Hodge and maybe future legends Harley Reid as well. So we've seen a lot of different festivities, Sam, and it's just such a great time of the year. And where else would you want to be other than the MCG, mate? Yeah.
For that one day in September, thank you for listening to the In the Ballpark in 2025. Maybe we might even do a grand final review and finish off the year. And, wow, what a fantastic footy season it's been, and we can't wait to stay across with you until the next year. So until the next time, from us outside the MCG, Sam and Michael, thank you for listening and thank you for watching.
news, reviews, and previews this AFL season,
Listen to In the Ballpark. Download the podcast now.